behavior is not appreciated by people. If these activists are breaking the law, then it's illegal. If they express their will by legal means without breaking the law, then they're fully entitled to do that. In this case, it would be beneficial to any state because it's a way to provide grassroots feedback on state policies, whether it be social, domestic or foreign policy. As for Mr. Kudrin, he is my long-standing associate. We see eye to eye on many vital issues of Russia's development, and that's for an obvious reason. We've known each other for a long time now. We worked together back in St. Petersburg, and then he became a member of the cabinet and proved to be one of the most efficient ministers. I've always backed him on key decisions. If I didn't, he wouldn't be able to work to implement those ideas and principles that he promoted. So, to a certain extent, that was our joint policy. He has his own view on certain things. It so happened that they had a disagreement with Mr. Medvedev on a number of issues, and since Mr. Medvedev was president, he had the right to take the decision that he eventually took. Today, Alexei Kudrin says that he is ready to rejoin the executive branch if the authorities were more decisive. But he's quite reluctant to specify what he means by being more decisive when I ask him to. Why? Because more decisive means taking tougher steps. For example, in terms of the pension reform, in terms of raising the retirement age. No one, including the opposition, wants to speak about it to the public. They think it's the right, but they don't want to talk too loudly on the issue. Also taking tougher steps on other issues like slashing budget expenditures and social spending, first of all. Many of our liberal economists think that our social expenditures are too high, that we raise salaries and pensions and social benefits too fast. They point out that the growth in real disposable incomes is unjustified. Last year we had a 4.2% increase, and it's up 5.9% in the first 4 months of this year already. They argue that salaries are growing faster than labour efficiencies, which is bad and dangerous for the economy. There's no denying it, and they're absolutely right. But maybe it's best not to decrease real disposable incomes, but rather to improve our labour efficiency. Russians often say that the goal is not to expand the amount of the wealthy people, but rather to reduce the amount of the poor. This is a very hard thing to do, and the best part of the opposition has admitted this to us in private and professional meetings. But publicly, they're afraid to speak about it, and this is wrong. I have told them many times now, if you stick to some idea, you have to be straightforward about it. Don't be afraid that some part of the nation won't like it. If you're to garner more support for your ideas, you have to stick to your principles, to expand your electoral base. Look at Western Europe today. They brought their countries to the edge of bankruptcy. But whenever they talk of lower salaries, people are up in arms. So it would have made more sense to increase your social spending and debt more gradually. Also, it would have been great for the authorities if there had been someone who could have told them about it. I don't think our social spending is too high. I don't think that we increase pensions, salaries and social benefits too much. But generally, Mr. Kudrin and other people like him have a point to make, and we need to listen to them. It's very useful. So I believe that an opposition that has the national interests at heart will be in demand.
Next question is from Oksana Boyko, the presenter of our new show. She moved into presenting after several years of reporting for RT. She too went to many war zones.
Мне, собственно, хотел задать вопрос, наверное, в продолжении вашего предыдущего ответа.
My question is a follow-up to your previous reply concerning principles and a principled position. I would like, however, to apply these notions to the Iranian issue. Iran will be holding a presidential election soon. I know that Russia doesn't like to meddle with domestic politics of other countries. That's why my question would be as general as possible. It's more of a philosophical kind. To me, Iran is a great example of how you can create extreme tension in mutual relations by blowing out of proportion some insignificant differences. The Iranian nuclear issue that everyone's been talking about for the last decade basically relies only on some vague suspicions which year after year have been dismissed even by Americans themselves. But that rhetoric has ignored the fact that Iran has been compliant with the non-proliferation regime by 99 or even 100%. The mainstream focus is on suspicions, but at the core, as I see it, is the relationship between the US and Iran. Tehran is partially to blame for the tension build-up, but the root of the problem is the stance of Washington, their signature foreign policy principle, friend and foe divide, meaning that if you are not their ally, you are their enemy. And it seems that the level of tolerance to dissent is quite low, and when it drops too much, we see threats of war based on groundless suspicions, as is the case with Iran, or assistance to war, as is the case with Syria. Russia has a good record of avoiding tension in relations with other countries. Your public statements indicate that you know the cost of enmity, or rather open confrontation. However, I believe that Russia and the US have ideological, fundamental differences on the use of force in particular that no private meetings can resolve. It all stems from the national idea of the US. They believe they have a higher responsibility, which is actually just a bigger right. So where is the line for you between avoiding an all-out confrontation that could have an impact on Russian security and maintaining our principled position, which could too be critical to our security?
I didn't quite get. Was it a punch at the US or Iran?
She's our tough guy.
A response to your question could take hours. It's so complex. I will try to be as concise as possible. First, I've repeatedly voiced Russia's official stance. Iran has the right to a peaceful nuclear program, and it can't be singled out for discrimination. Second, we need to be aware that Iran is located in a very challenging region. I've told our Iranian partners about that. That's why Iranian threats made towards neighboring countries, in particular Israel, threats that Israel can be destroyed, are absolutely unacceptable. This is counterproductive.
This is not a proper quote of the Iranian president.
It doesn't quite matter whether it's a proper quote or not. It means it's best to avoid a wording that could be improperly quoted or could be interpreted differently. That's why the focus on Iran does have a reason behind it. I have no doubts that Iran is compliant with the rules, simply because there's no proof of the opposite. According to the latest IAEA report, Iran has been abiding by the commitments it has taken up. True, there are some outstanding issues, but with due patience and friendly attitudes, they can be resolved. I have a great respect for Iran and a great interest in it. This is a great country indeed. You don't often hear this attitude mentioned in relation to Iran, but it's true. This is a country with a great culture, a great history, and is a great nation. They're very proud of their country. They have their own understanding of their place, both in the region and in the world, and that's something you have to respect. You've grasped the core of the problem. Iranians are very smart and cunning politicians, and to a certain degree they have exploited this confrontation with the United States.
They are not the only ones.
They're extremely crafty in this, and they do it to tackle their domestic political issues. When there's an external enemy, it united the nation. But I guess the United States have been employing the same technique. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, there have been no external threats that would allow Washington to dominate the West. There must be a threat so that the US can protect their allies from it. This position yields political and economic benefits. If everyone relies on one country for protection, then this country is entitled to some preferential treatment. So it's very important to possess this status